For the Friday night meal, you've cooked a delicious chicken soup with your children's favorite, matzo balls. You take a soup ladle and serve the soup from the steaming hot pot into individual soup bowls. Okay, all the kids have their soup in front of them, and one of the kids announces that he wants to add pepper to his soup. Another child wants to crush some matzah and add that to the soup. And a third child says the soup is too hot and wants to add something to cool it down. You hold up your hand and say, wait kids, before we do anything, let's consider the Shabbat issues here. Where do we start? The first thing is to test the soup in the bowls to determine if the temperature is Yad Soledet Bo. Because as we said many times, if the temperature is less than Yad Soledet Bo, then the issue of halachic cooking never even gets started. Well, in this case, the soup in the bowls is steaming hot. So the second thing we need to figure out is what number vessel the soup bowl is. Well, in this case, the big pot of soup is a first vessel. And what about the ladle? We learned that since a ladle goes directly into the pot and gets heated up, we act stringently and treat the ladle as a first vessel. So that makes the soup bowl a second vessel. So let's talk about the child who wants to add pepper to his soup. Pepper has not previously been cooked, so therefore it can only be added to a third vessel. The soup bowl, as we said, is a second vessel. So the only thing the child could do is to transfer the contents of his soup to another bowl, which is a third vessel, and then add the pepper. It's worth mentioning also that the child could only use pre-ground pepper. He could not actually grind up peppercorns in a pepper mill because that is another malacha that we learned about, tochen, grinding. Okay, now what about the child who wants to crush up matzah and add it to his soup? Well, matzah, as we know, is already baked, and we have a rule that there is no cooking after cooking. Ein bishul, acher bishul. However, baking is a different process than cooking, so we do have to be concerned that the baked matzah could get cooked in the soup. This sounds like a problem. However, we learned that this case is an exception. Remember, it was a bit of a stringency to say that a ladle is a first vessel. And also, it is a stringency to say that a baked item like matzah is susceptible to being cooked. So the halacha says that when these two stringencies emerge in the very same case, we can be lenient. And in fact, the matzah can be added to the soup. But not so fast. This child wants to crush his matzah into tiny pieces. And recall that one of the malachas we learned about was tochen, grinding. The rule there was that anything whose origin is from the ground may not be crushed into very small pieces. However, we did learn the principle that there is no problem of grinding something that's already been ground. Ein tochen acher tochen. And matzah is made from wheat that has already been ground into flour. So in our case, both from the standpoint of bishul and also from the standpoint of tochen, it is permitted to crush the matzah and add it to the soup. Phew! And finally, what about the child who says the soup is too hot and wants to cool it down? Well, by this time, the soup is probably already cooled down. But seriously, let's consider. We said that this soup bowl is a second vessel, and we have a rule that water and oil are the only two things that can be added to a second vessel. So in fact, you could add water to the soup. But if the soup is very hot, water might not do enough to cool it down. So what about ice? Could you add ice to a second vessel? No problem. Ice is no different than water. True, it's uncooked, but water can be added to a second vessel. And adding ice to the steaming hot bowl of soup is in fact a very good solution. Okay, now everyone can enjoy the chicken soup knowing that it's not only tasty and kosher, but that it also has no problems vis-a-vis the laws of Shabbat.